I'd like to call this meeting of the Republic Planning and Zoning Commission for July 8th, 2024 to order. Staff, please call the roll.
Commissioner Alexander.
Here.
Commissioner Brava.
Here.
Commissioner Ellis. Commissioner Means.
Here.
Commissioner Hyder. Commissioner Mann.
Here.
Commissioner Bridges.
Here.
First order of business is to approve the agenda. Are there any changes or suggestions for discussion? One that I saw is that it denoted March 13th, 2023 for the minutes, and modifying that to May 13th, 2024. Could I get a motion for approval?
Make a motion for approval.
Second.
I have a motion and a second. Staff, please call the roll.
Commissioner Bridges.
Aye.
Commissioner Mann.
Aye.
Commissioner Means.
Aye.
Commissioner DeBrava.
Aye.
Commissioner Alexander.
Next order of business is to review and approve the minutes from the previous meeting on May 13th, 2024. Are there any changes or motions? Any motions?
Motion to approve.
Staff, please call the roll.
Commissioner Means.
Aye.
Commissioner Mann.
Aye.
Commissioner Bridges.
Aye.
Commissioner DeBrava.
Aye.
Commissioner Alexander.
Staff, would you please read the meeting procedures?
The Planning and Zoning Commission holds public hearings as required by law and provides recommendations to City Council on matters relating to land use planning, zoning, and the subdivision of land. Any person who has an interest in the subject matter of a hearing will have the opportunity to provide testimony and present evidence to the Commission during the public hearing. Speakers are required to conduct themselves in an orderly and respectful manner. Disruptive behavior, including applause, yelling, speaking out of turn, or other inappropriate behaviors will not be tolerated. Additionally, the following applies to any person addressing the Commission. Speakers are limited to 5 minutes unless authorized additional time by the chairperson. Speakers must speak at the podium unless previous arrangements have been made by the chairperson. Speakers must legibly print their name and address on the sign-in sheet at the podium prior to speaking. Speakers must begin by stating their name and address, and speakers should speak clearly and into the microphone. The chairperson will announce the subject of the hearing, followed by a report from staff. The chairperson will then open the public hearing to the applicant, followed by those in favor of the application and those opposed in the application. The chairperson will close the public hearing. During this time, the commission will discuss amongst themselves. The public may not address the commission after the close of the public hearing unless requested by the chairperson. The Planning and Zoning Commission shall base their recommendation and/or decision on information and evidence presented during the public hearing. This decision, if required by the application, will be forwarded in writing to City Council for further consideration. Thank you.
We've got one rezone and one vacancy hearing tonight. The first hearing is rezone 24-012, a public hearing and possible vote to recommend the approval of an application to change the zoning classification of approximately 1.18 acres located at 1548 East Hamilton Street from a split zoning of multifamily residential R3, local commercial C1, and general commercial C2 to local commercial C1. Patrick, please read the report.
Wilson Properties, Inc. has applied to change the zoning classification of approximately 1.8 acres of property located at 1548 East Hamilton Street from a split zone property to local commercial C1. The property is currently split zoned between multifamily residential R3, local commercial C1, and general commercial C2. The property subject to this rezone application consists of approximately 1.8 acres, and the property is currently vacant. The following paragraphs contain brief analysis of present site conditions as well as the proposal's relationship to the adopted plans of the city. The city's comprehensive plan generally encourages the expansion of residential and commercial development through a proactive rezoning of land at appropriate locations. Appropriate locations are described generally throughout the plan with regard to the relationship of land at particular locations to infrastructure capable of supporting various intensities and densities of uses. The goal is to recognize potential infill sites as opportunities for development while mitigating impacts to adjacent established properties through supporting the development of vacant parcels as opportunities for densification that is harmonious with surrounding development. The rezoning of this parcel is consistent with the city's adopted plans. The subject property is adjacent to local commercial C1 zone parcels to the west and north. To the north and south, the property is adjacent to general commercial C2 zone parcels. It is also adjacent to multifamily residential R3 zone parcels to the east. The local commercial C1 zoning district is intended to permit and establish regulations for retail and service-related businesses with a compatible location adjacent to similar uses. Such rezoning would be compatible with the surrounding area. The general trend and vicinity of the subject property consists of highway commercial uses of varying intensities or multifamily residential uses. The development of the property will require connecting to existing municipal water and sewer mains located near the property. Both an 8-inch water main and 8-inch gravity sewer main are located in the adjacent properties or an adjacent right-of-way of the subject parcel. The sanitary sewer will flow from the site to the McElhaney and Schuler Creek lift stations before it is pumped to the wastewater treatment facility. The water system, named lift station, and wastewater treatment facility currently have capacity to serve the intended use. The property will have access from the existing private drive that directly funnels into the secondary arterial of East Hamilton Street and the primary arterial of US Highway 60. A traffic impact study was not required for the rezoning application. As a substantial portion of the subject property is already zoned local commercial C1, the waiving of the TIS is in line with the city policy. The subject parcel does not contain any areas of special flood hazard area or identified sinkholes. Staff considers the proposed zoning map amendments to be generally consistent with the goals and objectives of the comprehensive plan, consistent with the trend of development in the vicinity of the site, compatible with surrounding land uses, and able to be adequately served by municipal facilities. Based upon this analysis performed without the benefit of evidence and testimony of a public hearing, staff recommends the approval of this application.
Thank you. Is the applicant or their designee in attendance and wish to speak? Please state your name and address.
Good evening. My name is Ryan Stalzer with Lee Engineering. I'm representing the owner. Patrick did a fine job with the summary of this rezoning project. I don't really have anything to add to the points that he's made. I'll be happy to answer any questions you have.
Thank you. If any arise, we'll let you know. Is there anyone else here in favor that wishes to speak? Is there anyone who wishes to speak against the application? All right. Well, with that, we will close the hearing. And does anyone have any comments, discussions, or motions?
Motion to approve rezone 24-012.
I have a motion and a second to vote on the recommendation of rezone 24-012 to change the zoning classification of approximately 1.18 acres located at 1548 East Hamilton Street. Staff, please call the roll.
Commissioner DeBrava,
Aye.
Commissioner Alexander,
Aye.
Commissioner Bridges,
Aye.
Commissioner Mann,
Aye.
Commissioner Means.
Aye.
All right, we will move on to the next item, which is the vacation 24-001, which recommends the approval of an application to vacate a drainage easement on 505 West Brookfield Street. Patrick, please read the report.
The Buildings Department is requesting the vacation of approximately 738.45 square feet of drainage easement at 505 West Brookfield Street. The Buildings Department is requesting the vacation of the drainage easement currently present on the site of the land owned by Apple Properties LLC. The referenced drainage easement is currently unused for the intended purpose of drainage. Vacating this easement would allow for more flexibility in the construction of a multifamily residential development project. The redesign of future stormwater infrastructure and associated drainage easements will be reviewed and approved during the building permit process. Once vacated, the easement will return the associated rights to the property owner, Apple Properties LLC. The Buildings Department recommends approval of the requested drainage easement vacation.
Is the applicant or their designee in attendance and wish to speak? Is there anyone here in favor? Is there anyone here against? With that, we will close the hearing. And any discussion and or motion?
Motion to approve?
Second.
I have a motion and a second to vote on the recommendation of vacation 24-001 to vacate a drainage easement on 505 West Brookfield Street. Staff, please call the roll.
Commissioner Mann?
Aye.
Commissioner Means?
Aye.
Commissioner DeBrava?
Aye.
Commissioner Alexander?
Aye.
Commissioner Bridges?
Aye.
With that, we will move on to other business. Anyone have any other business? Hearing none. Citizen participation. Oh, there's a citizen that wants to participate.
Glad there weren't any cops out today.
Seeing no citizens that wish to participate, we will carry on to the Buildings Department update.
Thank you. Chris Tabor, Principal Planner. Tonight, what we're going to, Michael, if you don't mind, flipping to the slideshow. We're going to do P&Z 101, and the item that we're covering tonight is rezones and PDDs. So specifically kind of diving into these two items, which are some of the most important things that we deal with. So both of these items have one element in common, which is they're changing the land use. So here in this commission, one of the most important things that we deal with is the regulation of people's private property. We regulate how people can use their property, what they can put on their property, the configuration of the items that they put on their property. So when we make these decisions and look at these items, this is a very important thing to consider. It's good that we know, are very familiar with all of the elements of these things. So zoning is the mechanism through which local governments dictate the allowable land uses for property within their jurisdiction. Previously, we've covered kind of the state statutes that give the commission and our council the power to make these decisions. The origin of zoning is really rooted in private nuisances. It's a way to prevent nuisances that come about whenever land uses that are conflicting locate next to each other. So states, which are granted police powers to protect the health and safety of their citizens, pass down a particular element of this to cities in zoning. And so the way cities handle zoning is they separate different land and parcel into districts, and then they associate rules and regulations with each of those districts. So land usage specifically addresses what, where, and how. It covers the economic function of the land, what you can do with your land, how you can basically recoup any investment or make money off that land. It covers the configuration of the parcels for the land, so the size of those parcels, how things fit on them, and then the restrictions to structures such as building height, setbacks. And then, of course, there's other associated regulations that we have in our code that are associated with land usage, and those are things like parking, landscaping, etc. Those are often associated with a specific zoning district that is on the parcel. So as I'd mentioned, the assignment of land use, the mechanism that we assign land use for a parcel is through a zoning district. So in the city, we have a few different zoning districts that we regularly utilize. We have an agricultural district, 6 residential, 3 commercial, and 2 industrial districts. And then we have a number of the planned development districts. And those, again, are each individual. They're all separate districts. And so each one of those is its own district. Residential districts, we separate them. They differ by density. So we break those into 2 different things. One, how many dwellings are allowable within a structure. So you can see that in the single family, 2 family, and multifamily. Single family districts obviously allow for 1 single dwelling in a structure, while 2. And then multifamily is anything, in Republic, it's anything above 2 dwellings in a building. That's a multifamily building. So we separate those a little bit further as we get into things like the single family, specifically the low, medium, and high intensity. So single family is broken up further into how many lots can fit on an acre. So we have 3 districts here that we break in our single family into. R1L, which is, you can see in the chart, 12,000 square foot lots. The R1M, which is the most common zoning district that we have in the city. Those are 9,000 square foot lots. And then R1H, which we've seen a lot more of in the last few years. Smaller lots, again, 7,000 square feet. And then some of the other restrictions as well are on that chart. When we look at commercial districts, what we consider when we create these districts or make changes to this is the intensity of these districts. So local commercial is our less intense of the 3 commercial districts that we have here. And by intense, I mean impacts that business or what would locate there, the use, would have on neighboring properties. So you see mostly your smaller retail sales tax generators, not things that would generate a lot of larger truck traffic, not things that would have like a lot of outside storage, elements like that. On general commercial, our C2, you can see that we get, that's our more intensive one. It allows anything in C1, so you can do anything by right in the local commercial, but it also then includes a lot what we consider more intense uses of commercial type. So auto sales is a good example of that. So an auto, having an auto lot next to another property, that's, there's a very visual element associated with that use. That property is, utilized. It's very dense with cars. Another thing would be like an amusement center there. So if you had sports fields, things with outdoor activity where there'd be a lot of noise and a lot of, potential for interference with the way you might want to use your property, that would be another example of a more intense use. So that's how those are separated. We do have one additional commercial district that is also general commercial, but it's C3. This zoning district was created a few years ago, and it was created to allow for just specific uses and to put in place some relaxed restrictions for those uses. So some of these uses are a little bit harder to place in a traditional zoning breakdown of industrial versus commercial. So this general commercial, we don't have this a lot of places. The Builds building's an example where we do have this. But this is something that someone might consider zoning if we wanted them, if we would push them this way, if they needed some additional restrictions that you might otherwise not get on this type of property. So there's a wide range of things that's in this district. Again, we don't use it very much, but it is, it's kind of a catch-all for some of the weirder things, like publishing industries, recording studios, internet service providers, a lot of things that we don't have a specific place for in the other districts. If someone came to us and asked, where we would locate them, we would have to put them into a manufacturing or an industrial district simply because we don't have a call out for them somewhere else. So this gives us a place to help locate those while not also zoning a piece of property into as a manufacturing use were they to come along. So the next set of districts are our industrial districts, and those are broken into intensity again, similar to commercial. So we have light industrial M1, and that allows for basically restricted manufacturing. And it allows for all of C2, and so, which means it also allows for C1. So anything less intense can also locate there. But these are basically a manufacturing use that would create a minimal nuisance on a property. So you're still making something, or you are distributing something. You'll have truck traffic potentially. You'll be creating something from other products, but you're maybe not using the property. You're maybe not putting a lot of outdoor storage all over the property. What you do produce as byproducts, the noise, the smells, things like that are of a certain level that aren't considered particularly harmful or particularly distracting to neighbors. So if something breaks that kind of barrier there and is one of those really really intense uses where you've got like chemical smells or you've got a lot of storage of junk, it goes into heavy industrial, and that is basically our zoning where you can do most everything in there. If we didn't know where to put something, the heavy industrial would ensure for most of those things to have a place to go. Each of these districts takes into account what it's trying to accomplish in other related regulations. So for instance, the heavy industrial regulations, elsewhere in the code, that zone is associated with particular types of screening so that neighboring properties that have different zonings have a visual buffer from that. If there is any type of a non-commercial use, like a residential use that is located near any of these, there are distance buffers depending on what you're in, so that buildings can't actually locate within what's considered the view shed of the building. So there's these districts separate by use, and the purpose of that is to make sure that once these things build out wherever they are, that they'll impact different zones in the most minimal way possible. Kind of a couple of two that don't really fit in with the others are agricultural, which is exactly what you expect it to be. So here what we use it for is general agricultural style land, farming, crops, animal husbandry, those types of things. But then it's also a way to accommodate for single family residential development that's in the area of the city that we don't yet serve with public sewer or water. And so it's not considered an area that its development's allowable for a higher intensity because of that. The other one is the Planned Development District, PDDs, which we'll get to in a minute. I did want to bring to your attention, just because they do exist in the code, some districts that we don't actually have assigned to anywhere in the city. However, these are actual districts that are in the code. If you were to look through, you'd see them. The Main Street District is the one I really wanted to draw your attention to. So a Main Street District is probably what you think about when you think about a Main Street. So it allows for ideally buildings to be on the street with no setback. So you've got a sidewalk and a building next to it. It would potentially allow for overhang of the building over a sidewalk or a projecting sign, that type of thing, that our other commercial districts would not allow for. Our Main Street District, while we do have it in certain areas of the code, it's kind of unfinished, and it doesn't really give us a good map to actually assign something as a Main Street District. So if you're familiar at all with the downtown planning effort that's been going on, that Drury participated in and provided a little bit of assisted with the planning efforts for the private citizens down there. Staff is potentially going to come in and we'll be rezoning some of the city-owned properties with this Main Street District after we do kind of an amendment to that district and clean it up a little bit. So that's something you're very likely to see in the next few months. Another one that is not currently assigned anywhere in the city but does exist is the single-family manufactured modular and mobile home district. So this is the only district where you can put a manufactured, modular, or mobile style home. Again, there's just not any presently assigned in the city. And then we do have a commercial office institutional district. And so this is intended to be a district that is even a little bit less intense than the C1 district. So it's mostly geared towards smaller office space type of buildings, not retail type buildings. There are a few smaller retail types in there, but it's mostly small offices. And again, we don't have any of those in the city presently. Potentially someone could request one of these and we would, deal with that at that time. So to go into what a rezone is, first I want to explain kind of the zoning map. So the zoning map is something that you guys are all familiar with. We show it to you guys all the time. And if you saw that whole map, it would consist of all the assigned zoning districts, right? All the ones in the city that we just went over that actually are assigned to a parcel. And the way we always look at this is as a picture. It's just the easiest way to understand it. But it is actually an adopted ordinance. So in this case, at a point far in the past, an original zoning map was adopted and assigned over particular properties. And then that original ordinance assigned those districts where they needed to be or where they had been chosen to go. And then as we moved forward, additional properties were zoned and other properties were rezoned. So what you've got is like a truly living piece of code that's being, it's a collection of ordinances being amended all the time, being adopted and readopted all the time. So, and that's just not the way we usually think about it. That's actually what it is. We don't think about it as just a huge stack of ordinances. That would be a really difficult way for us to try and understand what's going on a given piece of property. But that's really what's going on in the background of that. So when somebody comes in and they are requesting a zoning, what they are asking to do is amend the ordinance or the collection of ordinances that has made up that map. Planned development district, on the other hand, it's also a rezone. It does contain an element of a rezone in there. It is a land use change. So if someone is coming to us and they are going to ask, they're going to ask us to do a project. They've got a specific project in mind, and they have a particular way they want to use the property. The way they want to use the property is not easily handled by our existing zoning districts. So they go through this other process, a PDD or a planned development district application. The most common differentiating factor of these is that we require this development plan, and you've got an example of one there in front of you. So when we get one of these planned development districts, someone is coming to us and they're asking to create out of whole cloth a zoning district. They'll name the district, and it will be assigned to the piece of property that they are applying for, only there and nowhere else. They'll present to us a development plan, and we'll work with them on this. Basically, a development plan, one way to think about it is kind of a mix between the preliminary plats that we look at and a zoning and a call out of zoning. So usually what you see there is kind of a rough configuration for the layout of streets and lots, and then notes or elements on there assigning zoning to those different areas or lots. They can be really complex or they can be really simple, but they're intended to give an applicant flexibility to do a project that they would have a lot of difficulty doing. They would have to do in many multiple stages if they went through our normal processes. So we see two types. You're probably more familiar with one type, which is where someone comes in and they've got a map like this, and then they say, in this area down here in the bottom right, I want to do like R1M or R1H. And in this area over here, I want to do R3. So what they're doing in that case is they are doing a mixed use plan where they are just taking our districts that we've already got regulations written out for. And so we've got, fleshed out districts that we've used over time and have vetted. And they're applying them to a piece of property so that they can create a mixed use project that has a myriad of zonings in one area. The other type that we do see sometimes is a truly new zoning district where someone comes along and they provide a development plan and like a narrative element, which is a written ordinance, basically the ordinance spelling out all of the regulations that goes along with that district. So they may have a different idea of how screening should work. They may have specific requirements for green space. Setbacks may be different. Those are some of the things that we see a lot of times. Oftentimes people will have a very set suggestion for what commercial uses are allowed in a commercial intended area of their development. So if someone takes the time to do that, then they are really trying to sculpt something to kind of a vision that they have for that product. And obviously that's a higher degree of work for both staff and the applicant, but that is, this is the process they could go through in order to create that product. So when we go through the rezone process, we are always taking, it's important to note that we're always taking a pre-application meeting with potential applicants in almost every case. And so at these pre-app meetings, we are kind of weeding out anybody that would be difficult for staff to support. We'll take any application if someone wants to submit that and pay for it and bring it before us. But we do try and provide people with all the information that we can possibly give them so they know they have the best idea of going forward what's likely to happen. So if we have like an application that's suggesting something that's clearly not compatible, we try and make them aware of that. Our goal is not to generate income off of this. It's really to provide transparency to these people and to make sure that both the city and the developer, that nobody's like wasting time on a project that is unlikely to be able to support it by staff. So if we do talk to a lot of people, and a lot of people that we talk to simply don't come forward with an application. So in most of the cases that people move forward, we have met with them and we've kind of vetted that project before you guys ever see it. We take an application, materials such as the deed, and then we take payment, and our planning staff goes ahead and creates a file for that. We do our staff review, and then we go into the public notice process, which I'm sure you guys are familiar with. We post the site. 100 property owners within 185 feet receive certified letters, and then we print a notice in the newspaper. We go ahead and make our report, and then we have the public hearing here at the P&Z meeting. And again, this is the actual public hearing. People often are, in some cases, given an opportunity to come back and speak before council, but this is the forum for public testimony right here. Council, does that because they choose to do that if they allow those people to speak. But state statute and our statute here puts this public hearing where we are required to hear that testimony in this room at these meetings. Then we go to council for 2 readings, and then the next step is different depending on which of these 2 you've done. So for a preliminary, for a rezone, the next step is going to be either preliminary plat for that property, or to move straight into a building permit that utilizes the new use they've applied for. And if that person has done a PDD, then it may be straight into permitting for the infrastructure of that subdivision. Or again, they may just apply straight for a building permit based on the new use that they've applied for and been approved. So staff is responsible for making the recommendation to council and also to this body. We do that through a staff report. It's important to note, and we do hear this a lot, you'll hear these in the meeting whenever people get up and speak, that we make this recommendation and we make the staff report before we've got public comment. It's just the nature of the beast that we wouldn't have time to take these comments and then to make an additional staff report. Sometimes that that wording that we put in there, kind of a caveat that this recommendation is made without the benefit of public testimony. You'll see that at the end of most of our staff reports. That some people kind of misunderstand why we're putting that in there, but that is to ensure that the readers of the report understand that we are writing this prior to the public testimony being held. And so we're not taking into account any of that testimony in that report. When we are evaluating these rezone applications, we do so through kind of a set of criteria that we look at. So as most of you have probably heard at some point in this meeting, we always try and point out that if an applicant comes here, they may have a specific use in mind for that property. They may be rezoning it so they can build a neighborhood there or build a particular business, but that's not the purpose of the actual forum here. That's not why we're having the meeting. The meeting is to discuss if the property itself is appropriate for that new zoning district, without taking into account or even considering the applicant's future plans for that. And that's simply because that applicant can turn around and sell that property at any point. The rezone itself is not tied to their future use of that property. So when we consider if a property should be rezoned to a particular use, the goal is to make sure that we consider the wide range of uses that could appear there based on that zoning district, and then to do our evaluation with that in mind. So when we make that evaluation, thinking of that, for us, the safest way to do that is to assume the most intense type of use. So if someone is going to rezone to, R1M, R1H, whatever, we're going to assume that they'll find a pattern of land use there that they can build the most dense version that our code allows, and then we will evaluate based on that density. Now, it almost never happens that they can build as dense as our code would allow, but that's just the safest way for us to do it, simply because, that's the most conservative estimate we can make. So the things we look at for this is alignment with the comprehensive plan and land use plan, and also compliance with municipal code and ordinances. These are some of the legal guiding pieces that, any rezone or any application has to come under. We also look for, importantly, the capacity of our sewer, water, and the transportation system. Can these systems that exist now or that will be brought there that are nearby, can those handle whatever use this person is asking for? If we assume that it would be the most intense version of the use, they would build out 200 homes, then can the sewer handle that? Can all the lift stations that has to chain through, can each of those handle? And also, do the water lines in the area, do they have enough flow for utilities to work if that gets built? Is there enough flow there for fire to come and use those hydrants to put out fires there? Our sprinkler system is going to be required if the flow is not high enough, that type of information. And then transportation system impact is evaluated in most cases with a traffic impact study. So a TIS, we actually require that the developer at their cost bring in a third party to do a study of the particular use that they're rezoning for, and to use the existing roads based on the level of service those roads and intersections have, to make a determination of what improvements would be needed if they're bringing in that use. So if they're going to add another 200 houses, they have to do a study basically that based on how those intersections and roads are functioning now, is there something they need to do, a turn lane, some type of improvement that would better facilitate traffic? Is there something that's required to make sure that everything runs smoothly there? And if there is, depending on what the report brings back and what we review and come to with our engineers, they may be required to make some type of improvement. Some cases they are, some cases they're not. It's just, it really depends on where those roads are in time, what the threshold is for requiring that and if it's being met. And again, public comment is not part of our staff report. We're just evaluating based on this criteria. Public comment is taken in by the commission and by the council. And that's kind of all I wanted to go over tonight. I know that was a little longer than we're used to, but those are kind of two of the what I consider to be the most serious things that we deal with. We're really standing up here and telling people they can or can't use their property in, the way they would like to do that. And so it's really important that we understand, all the rules when we do so. Thank you, guys.
Thank you for that level of detail. With that, nothing left on the agenda. Do I have a motion to adjourn?
Motion to adjourn.
Staff, please call the roll.
Commissioner Alexander.
Aye.
Commissioner Brava.
Aye.
Commissioner Means.
Aye.
Commissioner Mann.
Aye.
Commissioner Bridges.
Aye.
Commissioner Ellis.
Aye.